Welcome back to the channel, and thank you all for watching HCKT TV. Make sure you visit Everett, Kentucky. That's my hometown and the hometown of heroes. While you're visiting Everett, stay at Black Mountain Cabins and Campers, located there in Everett, Kentucky, just minutes from the trailhead. Also, while you're in Everett, eat at the Southern Belle Restaurant, located in downtown Everett. Also, if you support the channel, scan that QR code. Let's get started into this video. Thank you for watching. Where is the transparency at, Mr. Government? I can't see it. The Black Mountain Off-Road Adventure Area has released a 2025 riding schedule, so please come to Harlan County and ride with me. I hope to see you there. In part 2, the gentleman was talking about cell phones not working. I will tell you why cell phones don't work in these mountains. It's because of the iron and the quartz that he was even talking about. Those minerals that's in these mountains, cell phone signal can't get out. So that's why in Florida, where it's flat land and all that good stuff, their cell phones work, unless the tower gets knocked out, of course. But that's the main reason why you didn't have cell phone service in North Carolina. Anyway, guys, let's go on with part 3. The need is great. Make sure you comment, subscribe, share this stuff, get their story out, because they don't want to be forgotten about.
State and federal partners are helping North in this time of need. We're seeing progress, but we know the need is great.
It's a very proud community. We've gone through major fires. We've had flooding before. We've had rock slides, and everybody's joined forces and come back to get everything up and running again. But this is going to take some time to recover.
This morning, we've just loaded people down with supplies, and they're taking them to areas like Rome Mountain and Building and different areas where people just can't get out.
Right after the flood, the schools were where the families went to for help.
People are bringing in food from all over. They're dropping from helicopters, they're bringing in from big trucks, and we are just trying to sort the items. We have everything from waters to canned food to baby supplies, cleaning supplies, and people are just coming through and getting what they need.
I found my school under complete mud. It was anywhere from 3 inches to over a foot of mud. So Sunday after Helene, my son and my 2 daughters and I drove down to Michaelville, and there was the back playground completely underwater, the front playground completely covered with debris from the flood. I couldn't get into the building at all. The badge, of course, didn't work because there was no power. So I had my son crawl into my office window that I knew was unlocked, and when he came into the front, out of the front doors, he said, "Mom, you don't want to walk in." Upon us driving down to get to Michaelville, and I'll never forget this as long as I live, one of my grandmothers at Michaelville that I had her grandkids was standing beside of the road, and the little first grade girl was holding on to her shirt. And so I stopped and rolled down the window and I said, "Are you guys okay?" And she said, "No, we're not okay. This is our house. This is everything that we owned." And on both sides of the road, there at Michael Loop, were 2 piles of her trailer. And then in one of the trees was a little teddy bear. I talked to her for a minute and I said, if you guys need anything, you reach out. I'll come back by in a day or so, because again, we had no cell signal. There was no communication at all. You just had to drive to check on people. And I said, I'll be back through, and if you guys need anything, you let me know. And as we drove on to the school, there were both kids' comforters off of their beds hanging in the trees. When I walked in on that Sunday, I knew we were closed. We knew that Michael was closing in 2 years anyway, so fall of 26, we were going to consolidate with Burnsville anyway. And luckily, Burnsville has enough room for our students. They have been very welcoming to our faculty and staff and students and families. South Toe did have room also, and they too have been very welcoming to our people. I'm just thankful that both schools had room for us. Otherwise, we would have been searching for somewhere else to go. I had 198 students to be exact. And so my teachers and myself and my assistants we went to almost every student's house to ensure that they were okay. Even the ones that we couldn't get to, the fire department took me on a side-by-side. me holding on a side-by-side, going through like the water and up the, very badly damaged roads to make sure that our kids were okay. I had an assistant call. It was like a couple of days after Helene, and she said, Miss Bennett, I heard that we lost 2 students. And I said, no, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that we lost students. And she goes, well, Miss Bennett, I'm afraid we might have lost 2 students. And so that was when I went to the fire department and I took my book with all of the addresses. I said, I need you to take me here. We have to go here. And so we got on their side by side and they drove me up to the house, and there came the 2 kids running to me. And I grabbed them and I just cried because who can fathom the thought of losing students, especially, during this time. But there they were, all 198 students accounted for. And I'm very thankful because it could have been a whole lot worse.
Here at Rebuilding Hollers, we are still meeting the basic needs of our communities of Yancey and Mitchell County. And we do that with our distribution hub here. And so you'll see here in the warehouse, it does look a little chaotic, but it's actually organized by section.
So this is our clothing tent. It's all organized by size and gender. And so when families come, they're able to go through specific buckets to find new clothing for themselves and their children, as well as shoes. In this time, we have brand new winter coats, thermal underwear sets, new sheets and quilts. So about 2.5, 3 weeks into this journey, I got a call and it was, hey, I'm Mike with World Central Kitchen. And I was flabbergasted because I'm just, again, a random lady. And he said, I have 3 receipts in my pocket. I've been asking everyone who I need to talk to in the mountains. Because World Central Kitchen knows that they are hitting the majority of people when they set up, they deliver food to a distribution center and then people come and get supplies. Rising Light Relief, I serve 450 elderly, disabled, or people who lost their homes or vehicles to the storm. So our whole focus is that last mile, people who can't get to a supply center, and we deliver to their homes.
Mitchell County's been running a lot of volunteers, churches, and nonprofits that have been getting out there and getting stuff done. They're getting a lot of that work done, and they're getting it done quick. Had we not had these groups, we would have been in a terrible way.
So before the storm, I was a local realtor. And so I was actually on the road. I rode the river the last time I ever see her again, going and meeting some clients, checking on some folks that night. And it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen because it was just like a couple inches of water just pouring off the mountain. It was just like the whole mountainside was crying. And my community was in such devastation. And so I just had to keep making sure they had food. It just started with food. And then it evolved into everything else.
The last thing I said to my mother on Friday before we lost service was, Mom, it's getting bad. I'm scared. And then we lost service. But by Saturday, I told my neighbors, I need to go or my brother is going to cowboy up and try to come get me. And little did I know he had already left Greensboro. He was on the Tennessee side of Iron Mountain at the same time I was on the North Carolina side. And they closed the mountain pass. He went down to the river to try to hike into me. thinking he could hike the railroad trellis, not realizing that the tracks are no longer on the trellis. And he got down to the river at Bailey Poplar, and he could hear people trapped in their homes with air horns, trying to alert that they were still there. He told me that when he hit Tennessee, he thought he was coming to recover my body, that he didn't think there was any way that we had survived. I had started a GoFundMe because I knew that there were communities like Tokane, which is the backside of this mountain, where the sinkhole that opened up on the only road into that community, that holler, the sinkhole was bigger than my car. And the youngest person in there is 60. I started out with a couple donations, just trying to help people. You know, here's some socks, here's some gloves, here's Benadryl, because the bees were insane. The hornets were just awful. Somebody had donated 85 pounds of chopped chicken. And so a friend of mine who's 74, she started cooking chicken stew in large batches. And I would drive around with a pot of stew in the back of my Subaru and boxes. And I would see people out trying to rebuild their homes, or neighbors that, you know, they're living in campers in the shell of their former homes. And I would just stop and say, hey man, do you need a hot meal? And as that kind of kept going, I realized after the second or third time that someone took a meal from me, they trusted me enough to open up and say, like, well, yeah, I'm 74 and hand hauling wood. I could use a wheelbarrow because my shed and all my tools went down the river. And so I would get them a wheelbarrow. And that became Rising Light Relief and my home becoming a distribution center. We've had some really, really generous donations, including these Generacs from all over the country. And in some areas, if you're without power for 6 hours when it's 15 degrees, I have a lot of elders and people who are disabled.
And everything that you see in the warehouse was donated. We've not bought any of this. And we are spending our money on building material so that we can help our community get their homes rebuilt. And now I'm on a full sabbatical from real estate because I cannot sell Broken Mountains. And we are going to just keep building people's houses, because what we're giving them is a little bit of hope. You know, you've got men that have been running heavy equipment since the day this started, but their home is still, they still have trees down.
I've seen people that had lost their house and everything they had, that worked every day to help others, lost everything they had. And, you know, you feel so bad. It's like, oh man, I didn't lose anything and you've lost everything. And they're still out helping.
At Thanksgiving, I gave everybody a note that said, hey, we're going to be doing Thanksgiving dinner. And Miss Claudia is 84 and her husband, I believe, is 82. And so Miss Claudia called me not because they needed anything, but she wanted to know if having 5 people for dinner would be too much. Which of course it wasn't. We were doing food for 570. And then she started crying. And she said, Alyssa, you don't understand how much these meals have meant to us. For 10 weeks, those were the only hot meals that those 2 elders had. And it was because for 8 weeks they didn't have power. And when the power came back, the surge killed every one of their appliances. My volunteers are going up there tomorrow to install a full set of brand new appliances for her, all of which have come from donations. So what started with a pot of chicken stew has kind of become this huge reaching thing and snowballed, and very unintentional on my part, but you know, we just looking for every way that we can help and then finding ways to meet those needs.
A lot of good groups have come in and restored things or their houses to where they can live in them, or brought them campers. They've done a lot.
But we're actively moving forward into building new houses and rebuild them if they weren't totally devastated. If they're totally devastated, we're building a new house. So we're real excited about that.
And you know, now people come out here and they're like, oh, the destruction. And I'm like, this looks good compared to what it looked like before. This looks good. So I was afraid. And I told God, I said, I'm afraid. And I said, God, is this my day to die? And he said, no. Thursday night, I had gone to bed and Holy Spirit started nudging me. And it's like his words were like poking at me. And he said, cover the crawl space vents. So I got up out of bed and came out in the dark and in the rain, and I covered the crawl space vents. Those little plywood inserts that I'd made to put in to help keep the house warm in the winter. Friday morning, the water here was just, I was in the middle of a river. I'd never seen anything like that in the 10 years I've been here. And I have a neighbor who is 89 years old, and he's been here his whole life, and he has never seen anything like what happened. He climbed up in the attic, and he said his whole house was shaking. It was just shaking. Now the garage, water got in the garage, and the laundry room behind the garage, on the back side of the garage, both got water and ended up with about 4 inches of mud when the waters actually receded. And I look around and I'm like at my home, and there's so much even outside that still needs to be done here. But I think about the people that need it more than me, you know. A lot of people are suffering right now. And we still need help out here. We need people with equipment that can come out and help clean places up.
Even after it was over, just to mitigate the roads, there were boulders as large as, you know, some large excavators. They were huge. Even having equipment, that was a challenge.
See that big rock? That was not there before. But this side-by-side was left at my home by Restore Appalachia. So it's been used for delivering stuff for people. It's been used by one of the doctors that's been coming in to help people to go out and make house calls and deliver medicine and stuff like that. This area right here, a tree fell across right in here, and behind it, a wall of rock developed. So there was really no way to even pass through here.
It's just been devastation all over the whole entire county. Pensacola, Cane River, it's just been really bad. South Toe got hit really bad.
You know, Egypt Ramsey Town, probably the worst of all. You know, it's downstream of where all the rivers intersect. Well, so both fire departments at Egypt Ramsey Town were overtaken by water. One completely destroyed, and the other had to be evacuated for it. And they're still trying to get back on their feet. That probably got the most devastation. And they don't have roads like we have. It's slow. A lot of us know that. Some people will be frustrated, and that's their right to be. It is frustrating. It's a painful time, but the recovery's going.
We're just very, very thankful that people were willing to lay down their lives. Some of them just left their jobs. They had businesses and thought, well, I'll just take my business and do what I do for them and not really get paid for it. So a lot of financial sacrifice by people to come out here and help us. And we're really, really grateful. Really grateful.
So Mitchell County's had a lot of misinformation about us. I don't like the word misinformation because it's a highly charged word, but when it's documentable, then it is misinformation. When it's a lie and it's sported out as the truth, that is misinformation, and it's hurting us over here in these small counties.
You know, now the biggest problem you've got all these outside groups that have come here, and they're using it for clicks.
They'll have a social media channel or something like that. It'll be kind of reinforced with a GoFundMe page. They'll make an outlandish claim of, something that would make someone want to click out of concern. We had one where we were accused of stealing generators, and I understand after they looked the person up, they had criminal charges in their background and had frauded people in the past. And when you point that out, we're not going to give this gentleman generators to take out into the community. Folks are wanting to look at that. He just got himself 2 million views, and within the 2 days that was circulating around, he probably got 50,000 on a GoFundMe. So that misinformation is disheartening because it takes our resources.
There's a thing such as disaster tourism. We got that big. Off-road clubs coming through, still getting it. Grifters, they follow disasters and just live in the disaster area. They'll go do a few things to keep under the radar, but mostly they're just taking donations.
And do you know how infuriating it is to go down here? One of our friends who was shoveling out mud from these buildings, he sat there and watched a TikToker do a dance on this smashed vehicle.
There's so much going on right now for us to have to move over into building that trust and restoring it because someone thinks that misinformation is true, that makes our citizens not get help.
There's a handful of people in Mitchell, same in Yancey, same in Avery, that these anti-government types that want to stick it to FEMA and Joe Biden's, I don't care what anybody says. The local government has done a phenomenal job here. Of course, everybody wants to blame things on government. Could they could the state and federal government do things better and quicker? Probably.
We felt like the state and federal level let us down.
So you can talk to Yancey, you can talk to Avery, you can talk to some of the other counties, and they all have varying perspectives on how well the state did. They all have varying perspectives on how well the federal government did. Working in government, the democratic process is specifically designed to go slow. It's designed to collect thoughts, formulate those thoughts, and put those thoughts into action. When you're in an emergent situation, that doesn't work as well.
This is a unique storm. It's hit Mitchell County in our mountain region, and we typically don't get a hurricane in the mountains. Typically, we might get a flood event, but we don't get the wind and the flood at the same time. A lot of folks have said in FEMA, we're kind of like a square peg trying to put in a round hole. The storms that hit the beach, they got a round hole and a round peg, and it fits. I gave a lot of patience the first couple months because, like I said, this isn't a unique storm event. But, when you're in Mitchell County and we don't have any FEMA trailers here to house our folks, and it's 3 months after the storm, that is frustrating.
A lot of the locals down here has got that's lost their whole house, or most of all their belongings, and all they've worked for is $750, and they're left to fend for themselves. I mean, none of these folks around here has flood insurance. They can't afford it. Paycheck to paycheck, barely make ends meet.
Thanksgiving was 9 weeks after Helene, and everybody had been told, take what you need. And a lot of people weren't even taking that, believing that someone else needed it more because their house was still standing. And I think a lot of people expected, well, FEMA's going to help me, and they're not going to be able to help them as much, so I'll be okay. The day before Thanksgiving was when we all got our notices that we were denied by FEMA. Or, some of the people I serve, their home is $115,000 base recovery before a single appliance or furnishing is put in. They've been approved for $40,000. They're both elderly, and she has terminal bone cancer. So a lot of people are facing insurmountable odds. A ton of people up here will end up bankrupt.
We're looking at the numbers on a lot of those FEMA claims, and I'm hearing from the individuals that they're not getting the money they're applying for. There's maybe getting a small portion, but not getting as much. Boots on the ground with FEMA, let me say, have been awesome. Those folks understand. They walk a mile in our shoes, but it seems like when it gets sent up the ladder, about 2 levels up, it seems to not really want to move as fast.
The response times are not what you would expect from government, and can't be. To be fair, can't be. But the frustration is definitely merited, because when you're looking at time and you see your valuables, you see a freezer full of meat go to waste. That's a lot of money for a lot of people. And I've told a lot of people that people here have 3 things. They've got their land, they've got their family, and they've got their pride. Nobody here's got tons and tons of money. Nobody here's got a whole lot of stuff that they care about. They got their land, their family, and their pride. And when those 3 things are at risk, you'll see a defensive side of our people locally that you weren't used to seeing.
Now, you find people that'll tell you it's horrible. But I think for the most part, what's gone on here should be an example to how everybody else should handle stuff like this.
If I was a normal citizen looking for help, I think I probably could say, if I didn't see the inside workings of government, I think I probably could say they moved a little slow. But looking at it from my perspective, they moved at the pace that they're designed to move in. There's a large migrant population here, or a sizable one, I should say. I stay in touch with that because my wife is Hispanic. She's here legally on her residency based on our marriage. For me personally, once the pressure of the emergencies started coming off, I started looking around and trying to figure out where my Hispanic neighbors were and how they were faring.
When the hurricane happened, a lot of people were staying home, just kind of doing their own thing. A lot of people were relying on their neighbors, on their friends, their families.
I found out that they were afraid to come to the distribution centers and help themselves. So when you're a subculture inside of a culture, it's pretty easy to become a culture in yourself and become self-sufficient. What happens though when everything goes topsy-turvy, you don't have a recourse because you've not been liaisoning with the overall culture.
Sometimes we tend to put those barriers when there don't need to be any barriers. Once we started getting assistance from community members, from other organizations coming in here in the county, a lot of people felt relief, and I saw that in the Hispanic community. A lot of people are, to this day, are very grateful.
We had to actively work, the county actively worked to translate all the Mitchell reports into as many of them as they could into Spanish. And eventually, they started coming and getting supplies. They were on they were living on fumes at that point. And I'm going to say it was probably 3 weeks before there was really a whole lot of activity at the distribution points from the Hispanic contingency.
Just because they may not be fluent in English, they still have necessities. They have a voice.
And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the more vulnerable population doesn't always get the attention because they're not as accessible, simply from the fact that they're not as accessible.
And at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have feelings, emotions, and being there to support each other, what else can we do to help each other in those times of difficulty? You know, we come to a realization that all we can do is just be good to each other.
I will say that I saw a lot of neighbors helping out their Hispanic neighbors in both directions. Hispanic neighbors helping out their neighbors.
The day after the storm, I wanted to go in to look. I wanted to be the first one in to just look at the damage in my home. There are several Mexicans that live right next to me. They had lost their home in a fire a few years ago. I just was walking through, and by the time I got to the other end of the house, one of them came in, and he held up a garbage bag, and he was like, and I said, yeah, and I was pulling things out, and the best I could, and he was helping me, and I was crying, and he reached over and he patted me, and I thought about that later, and I thought that's universal language right there, just him patting me.
A lot of people that I encountered in the community mentioned cooking for officers out there, for the soldiers that were coming in.
Sometimes we get a little too comfortable in our own lane. Unless we're looking over the fence at our neighbors and seeing things from his perspective, we end up with a very divided political environment as a result of our neighborhoods being divided. And so I feel like this had a net positive effect on Mitchell County for sure.
Regardless of where you came from or who you are, and all that I saw on and on was just people loving on each other.
You know, I'm a proud Republican. I'm proud that I voted for Trump. I think it's hilarious how these Democrats was pushing electric cars down Americans' throats, and now they're attacking an electric car company that they used to support. But because he doesn't want to support their far-left garbage, they want to destroy his company. Democrats, grow up. I can't stand you all. Anyway, guys, the reason I'm mentioning this, has Trump been to this site? And if not, I think he needs to go. And he needs to go see the destruction of this storm. Anyway, guys, part 4 is coming up. Y'all stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you. God bless.